Welcome back. You're watching In Your Interest. I'm Shweta Kothari. With India ranking high for extended work hours and a global focus on corporate burnout, employees must find strategies to cope with overwork and toxic environment. In cases like death of Anna Sebastian at EY Pune, it's evident that excessive workload and unbalanced expectation can have fatal consequences. With companies bearing the primary responsibility, employees also need tools to navigate these situations. So what should employees do? Setting boundaries is crucial. Employees should clearly define their work hours and avoid normalization of after-work hours. Establishing a routine that includes breaks, personal time can also prevent exhaustion. Building a support system at work, whether through colleague or mentors, can also provide emotional and practical relief. Sharing concerns about workload or toxic work culture with trusted peers can help alleviate the pressure of isolation many employees feel in such environments. Now, in toxic workplaces, knowing one's right is also essential. Employees can reference legal protection and human rights frameworks, such as EY's Global Human Rights Statement in this case, to seek recourse when overwhelmed by unsafe practices. If internal systems fail, they can also consider reaching out to labor unions or extended bodies. Lastly, focusing on personal development outside of work can also empower employees to explore alternative career options if their current environment becomes unbearable. While the burden of change lies with organizations, these strategies can help employees cope with overwork and toxic culture while also advocating for safer work environment. What are the options that an employee has in case of a burnout, and what should they do? How should they compartmentalize that pressure? Let's talk about that. Joining us is Dr. Bhavna Barmi. She is a senior clinical psychologist. Dr. Bhavna, thank you very much, ma'am, for taking time out. There's a conversation of sorts happening everywhere we look, and the conversation is every time a young person is faced with a situation where they are looking at extreme work for the very first time outside of college, they usually succumb. We're seeing this more in Gen Zs as compared to people who've been psychologically trained to overwork. Is this a problem with the mindset of the young people, or is it a problem with the increased work pressure that a lot of people have to face? Where and who's responsible for this?
See, I think it's a combination of both the things, Shweta, that you're saying. One, I would say many young professionals face immense pressure to succeed quickly, whether it is from their own personal high ambition that they have, whether it is the society, whether it is their family. The need to excel and climb the corporate ladder early and quickly in their careers often leads them to increased amount of stresses. Along with that also comes the kind of the balancing of the financial pressures that they are facing. So sometimes it is balancing the debt, like if there were some student loans that they had taken, or new financial responsibilities where they are resettling into a different space, into a different city. This can also overwhelm the young professionals, and the fear of not being financially secure adds to the stress because they don't want to join the bandwagon of attrition. And thereby they want to constantly keep working so that the chance of not losing the job doesn't come about in their life.
Okay.
So there is a lack of jobs.
Okay, Dr. Bhavna, to a young person perhaps watching you right now and watching this show, what are the options they have? Because on one side, they have to provide for their family. They don't want to join a bandwagon of people who are increasingly being either thrown out or leaving because they can't afford to leave. At the same time, their workplace is very toxic. What options do they have?
I think the number one option is to establish a work-life boundary, what we call as work-life balance for one's own self. So very clearly defining the work hours and creating rituals to separate work from family or personal life is very, very important. So thereby, we need to encourage the youth to set achievable incremental goals rather than aiming for immediate success. So they need to be encouraged to take smaller steps that can prevent feelings of overwhelming pressure. Because otherwise, if they don't practice this work-life balance in which self-care and personal health or mental and emotional health is not prioritized, then they will succumb to burnouts, exhaustions, and the kind of stressful, unfortunate circumstances that are happening. They must recognize that what is the work-life balance that they themselves can maintain, because each employee, each youth is different from the other. So they cannot get into a comparative. I have to define for myself what is my work-life boundary, and in the time when I have quality time for myself, what is it that I can do to practice stress management? Okay, do I like to incorporate a hobby? Do I need to cultivate some mindfulness breathing exercises? Do I want to get on exercise? Because three things that employees, and especially the younger employees, should not compromise on is their sleep, is their nutrition, and is their exercise, both mental as well as physical. And that is the first thing that we compromise on. Second thing is the lack of connectivity. We somehow start becoming very isolated under stress zones or work zones, where our primary focus becomes only on work. Vis-a-vis, we need to identify that there is quality time that I need to keep for myself, in which there is quality time for my family and my social connects. Because having a avenue outside of my workspace, which is not only with my peers or my seniors, is going to give me that extra shield of de-stress around me. And definitely at work, you must create a safe space. A safe space where if you are finding yourself triggered or overworked, then you should be able to go and speak, starting with your peers, to your bosses, to your managers, to your HR. Go and seek where there is employee assistance programs, where there is wellness and well-being established in the corporates. And here I would urge every corporate to have this kind of an employee assistance program for their employees.
Absolutely.
I think it is a mandate, especially for the youth of our country, to have access to these kind of resources.
All right,
Online,
Dr. Bhavna Barmi, as much as ma'am, I would like to have you more on the show. We've run out of time. Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts. Thank you for sharing what employees can do. It's also important to remember there's always a choice to say no, and employees can exercise that choice to say no. It's not a privilege, it is a choice. And perhaps we believe more and more employees will now start saying no to overwork, to excessive phone calls, to work beyond stipulated hours. And with that, we've run out of time on this show. Thank you very much for watching.